Now we go to the shared rights of both the wife and the husband. The first shared right is called Husn al-Ishra. And this is the most important one because this is the foundation of a good marriage. Husn al-Ishra is beautiful companionship. In other words, each spouse has the right to live with the other spouse in which they are actually treated very well. So this is a mutual right. In other words, the wife has a right to be treated beautifully by her husband. It's a haqq. It's a right. And the husband has a right to be treated beautifully by his wife. That's called Husn al-Ishra. And that there are verses about that. Treat them with kindness. Aisha radiallahu anhu relates a sound transmission that the Prophet ﷺ said, I am to you. It's a famous hadith about Abu Zara' and Zara'. It's a very beautiful hadith. There's whole books have been written just on this hadith alone. And it's a hadith where the Prophet describes these wives talking about their husbands. Each one says something about her husband. And then it comes to Zara', and she starts talking about Abu Zara' and how wonderful he was. And her life was just heaven and bliss with Abu Zara'. And then the one thing happens is that he marries another woman who was very beautiful. And Zara' became very jealous and ended up causing a divorce to happen. And then she married another man, but he was nothing compared to Abu Zara'. And she really regretted it. And in the end, the Prophet ﷺ said to Aisha, I'm like Abu Zara' to your Zara'. And what he was telling her was, we have a very beautiful relationship, so don't destroy it by your jealousy, because you'll regret it. And I think that I mentioned that last week, just about the fact that all of his wives, none of them wanted a divorce from him. And there was difficulty in the household. It wasn't a bed of roses. There was difficulty. They had their human troubles that go with the domestic situation. All that was part of, for us, but also for the full experience of the human life that the Prophet ﷺ lived. In terms of what engenders and facilitates these relationships, one is really important, is Islamic etiquette. So it's very important just to remember that just like your brother, you're supposed to greet them with a smile. You're supposed to, these things you do with people outside, sometimes we forget that the people we're living with have more right than other people to those same etiquettes. And also doing things for each other. Ithar, preferring the other to the self. This idea. And the thing about it is, men have to be very careful because there are many women that is their nature. Right? So in other words, a man can get into a very exploitive relationship with his wife because his wife, by her nature, especially women that were born in and raised in a more Eastern tradition, where there's a lot of double standards with the male and the female children. You can get into an exploitive relationship with the wife where you're allowing her to do everything and she says, oh, well, I love to do it. Well, that doesn't mean that she should be doing everything because she loves to do it, because she's getting all the reward, first of all. And second of all, she's going to appreciate, no matter what she says, when you help her out and do things for her. She will appreciate it because that's human nature. So just maintaining the etiquette. And then also a wife should not allow domestic concerns so that she forgets her own husband and then becomes like a domestic servant too, because that can happen. Woman becomes so preoccupied, she becomes more like a domestic servant and not realizing that there's a whole sakina, there should be spiritual relationships, spiritual growth between the two, things like that. And a man also has to be very careful of not getting into the, and this is all about, I'll really tell you in all honesty, the thing about life is the challenge for everybody is not to fall asleep. And it's really easy to just get into these patterns of perfunctory behavior and to forget what life is about. And you can really forget that this is it. Your life is an aggregate of moments. And that when you're with your wife or your husband, it can either be a horrible experience, it can be a wonderful experience, or it can be a missed experience. Right? John Lennon said, life is what happens when you're busy making other plans. And there's a lot of truth in that. You know, you can get so caught up in these day-to-day concerns that life passes you by and you missed it. So family is like that. Your children are like that. It's very easy to lose sight of that.